The dust on Kepler 442b had not moved for 10,000 years. The dead planet spun slowly around its dying star, cold and empty. Nothing lived here anymore. The rocks told stories of a great civilization that once built cities reaching toward the sky. Now only ruins remained. Dr. Kithara walked carefully through the broken stones. Her 4 legs moved with care over the sharp rocks. The air tasted of metal and death through her breathing mask. Behind her, the dig team worked with quiet tools, searching for anything the ancient people might have left behind. "Doctor, you need to see this," called out Brentok, one of her assistants. His voice cracked with excitement through the radio. Kithara hurried to where Brentok stood. He pointed at a hole in the ground where their digging machines had been working. The hole went deep into the planet, much deeper than they had expected to find anything useful. "The scanners show something big down there," Brentok said. "Something made of metal, very old metal." Kithara looked at her scanner. The readings showed a massive structure buried far below the surface. It was huge, bigger than any building they had found on this dead world. The metal was unlike anything in there. "Databases. Get the heavy diggers," she ordered. "We're going down." It took 3 days to reach the metal structure. When they finally broke through, they found themselves standing in a vast underground chamber. The walls curved high above their heads, covered in strange writing that glowed with a soft blue light. The air inside was clean and fresh, as if the room had been sealed yesterday instead of thousands of years ago. "By the 7 stars," whispered Brentok. "It's a data vault." Kithara had seen many ancient ruins in her years as an archaeologist, but nothing like this. The chamber stretched away into darkness, filled with tall metal towers that hummed with quiet energy. Each tower had screens and controls that still worked after all these centuries. "How is this still running?" asked Jendar, another team member. "The power readings are off the charts." "The builders were advanced," Kithara said. "Much more advanced than we thought." She approached the nearest tower and placed her hand on a control panel. The screen lit up with symbols and pictures. The writing looked familiar, but different from the other ruins they had found. This was older, much older. "Doctor," called Brentok from across the chamber. "You need to see this tower. The symbols here. They're in 17 different languages." Kithara hurried over. The screen showed the same message written over and over in different scripts. Some of the languages she recognized from other ancient sites. Others were completely unknown. But one thing was clear. This was important enough that the builders wanted to make sure someone could read it. "Can you translate any of it?" she asked. Brentok worked at his portable computer, comparing the symbols to their language databases. "Parts of it, yes. The 3rd script here is Old Zintari. It says something about ... a warning? And coordinates. To a star system." "Which system? Let me check." Brentok's fingers moved quickly over his computer. That's strange. It's a small system on the edge of the galaxy. Nothing important there, according to our star charts. Just a yellow star, with a few rocky planets." Kithara felt a chill run down her spine. "What else does it say?" "Warning ... forbidden zone. Extinction class ... Brentok looked up from his computer with worried eyes. "Doctor, I think this is about the inhabitants of the 3rd planet in that system." More team members gathered around as Brentok continued translating. Each language told the same story with small differences, but the message was always the same. The 3rd planet in the distant star system was marked as dangerous, very dangerous. "Here's a longer section in Old Coloran," Brentok said. "It talks about a species called humans. The builders say they studied these humans for many years. They describe them as..." The translation is difficult. "Berserker species, or maybe endless war makers." What does that mean? Asked Jendar. Kithara was already moving to another tower, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. Help me access more of these records. If the builders left warnings about a specific species, we need to know why. They worked through the day and into the night, translating what they could and recording everything else. The picture that emerged made Kithara's skin crawl with fear. The humans, according to the ancient records, were unlike any other species the builders had encountered. They did not have the strongest bodies or the biggest brains. They were not the fastest or the most advanced, but they had something that made them incredibly dangerous. Listen to this, Rentok said, reading from a translation. They do not surrender when beaten. They do not break when hurt. Instead, they learn from pain and become stronger. They remember every wound and plan their revenge for generations. Another section described human warfare. The builders had watched these humans fight among themselves for thousands of years. They noted how humans would destroy their own cities rather than surrender them to enemies. They would sacrifice themselves to save others. Most frightening of all, they would learn from every defeat and come back stronger. The builders tried to make contact, Kithara read from another screen. They sent peaceful ships to the human world. The humans destroyed them without warning or negotiation. When the builders sent warships to force contact, the humans studied the wreckage and built better weapons. The final entries in the database told a story that made Kithara's blood run cold. The builders, one of the most advanced civilizations in galactic history, had decided that humans were too dangerous to contact. Instead, they had marked the human star system as a forbidden zone and built a network of warning beacons around it. The last entry here, Brentuk said quietly. It's marked as urgent priority. Listen. Final warning to any who find these records. The humans of Sol 3 must remain isolated. They are evolution's perfect warriors. If they ever leave their world and spread among the stars, they will not stop until all other species bow to them or are destroyed. We have seen their potential. We choose exile over extinction. Kithara stared at the screen. The coordinates in the warning pointed to a star system that the Galactic Empire had been planning to explore. According to the latest survey reports, the system showed signs of industrial activity on several planets. The Empire's expansion plans included that entire region of space. Doctor, Jendar said nervously, shouldn't we report this to the Empire immediately? If there's a dangerous species out there. Yes, Kithara said, but her voice was troubled. Yes, we should. But even as she spoke, she wondered if anyone would listen. The Galactic Empire was proud and strong. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and absorbed dozens of species into their civilization. The idea that some primitive species on a distant world could threaten the Empire would sound like madness to the Imperial Council Dot as they packed up their equipment and prepared to leave the dead world. Kithara took one last look at the warning. Screens. The ancient builders had been wise and powerful, but they had chosen to run from the humans rather than face them. The Empire, she feared, would not be so wise. The data vault sealed itself as they left, the ancient lights dimming back to their eternal watch. But the warning was now in Imperial hands, and Kithara knew that the course of galactic history might depend on whether anyone would heed the words of a long-dead civilization not far away. In a small yellow star system, the humans continued their daily lives, unaware that their ancient reputation had finally caught up with them. Admiral Zex-High stood on the bridge of his flagship, the mighty dreadnought Eternal Glory. Through the massive viewing windows, he could see the yellow star that the ancient warnings had spoken about. Around him, the ships of the 47th Subjugation. Fleet spread out in perfect formation. 300 vessels, from massive battleships to swift fighters, all ready to bring another world into the Empire's embrace. "Long-range scans are coming in, Admiral," reported his tactical officer, Commander Veltar. "The system is much more active than we expected." Zex-Hi walked to the scanning station and studied the readings. His confidence faltered slightly as he saw what the sensors were showing him. The third planet, which should have been the only inhabited world, was indeed populated. But so was the fourth planet, and there were signs of activity throughout the asteroid belt. Even the gas giant's moons showed signs of civilization. "How many of them are there?" he asked. "Difficult to determine, sir. The signatures suggest millions of individual craft moving throughout the system. Some appear to be military vessels, but most seem to be civilian transports and industrial ships. They've spread throughout their entire star system," Zex-Hi muttered. This was unexpected. Most species remained on their home world until they developed faster-than-light travel. These humans seemed to have colonized their local space using only primitive rocket technology. "Sir," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the third planet. Multiple sources, actually. They seem to have many different governments. Put the strongest signal on screen." The viewing screen showed a human face. Yiz-Hi had read the files about human appearance, but seeing one in person was still strange. The creature had only 2 eyes, set in a flat face covered with soft skin. No scales, no natural armor, no obvious weapons. They looked almost fragile. Human on the screen spoke in its own language, then switched to broken Galactic standard. "Unknown vessels, this is Earth Defense Command. Please identify yourselves and state your purpose in our system." Zex-Hi smiled. At least they were trying to be diplomatic. "Prepare the standard first contact message," he ordered. The message was simple and had been used on hundreds of worlds. The Galactic Empire came in peace. They offered trade, technology, and protection in exchange for loyalty and resources. Most primitive species were so amazed by Imperial technology that they surrendered immediately. "Broadcast the message," Zex-Hi commanded. The humans' response came back within minutes, and it was not what they expected. "We have reviewed your offer," the human spokesperson said. "Earth and her colonies decline to join your empire. We ask that you leave our system immediately." Zex-Hi blinked in surprise. "They're refusing? Do they understand what they're turning down?" "Perhaps they need a demonstration," suggested Commander Veltar. "Standard procedure calls for a show of force if diplomatic overtures fail." Zex-Hi nodded. "Very well. Target one of their asteroid mining stations. Destroy it with minimum force. That should convince them we're serious." The forward guns of the Eternal Glory powered up and fired a single blast at a small mining station in the asteroid belt. The beam of energy crossed space in seconds and struck the station dead center. The explosion was visible even from their position near the edge of the system. "That should make our point clear," Zex-Hi said with satisfaction. The response came, not from Earth, but from a gruff voice speaking perfect Galactic standard. "Imperial ships, this is Sarah Chun aboard the mining vessel Lucky Strike. You just killed 300 civilians who are doing nothing but digging rocks. That was a mistake." Before anyone on the Imperial bridge could respond, the Lucky Strike opened fire. The beam that struck the Eternal Glory was unlike anything in Zex-Hi's experience. It wasn't a military weapon, but a mining laser designed to cut through solid rock. Somehow, the humans had amplified it far beyond its normal power. The blast tore through the dreadnought's shields as if they weren't there, and cut a deep gouge in the armor plating. "Impossible!" Veltar shouted. "How did a mining ship penetrate our shields?" "All ships, battle formation," Zex-Hi commanded. "Destroy that vessel." But the Lucky Strike was already moving, diving behind a large asteroid. Other human ships began appearing from hiding places throughout the belt. Most of them looked like civilian vessels, but they all carried weapons. More importantly, They all seemed to know exactly where to hit Imperial ships to cause maximum damage. "Admiral," the tactical officer called out, "we're detecting weapon signatures throughout the system. They've turned everything into a weapon. Cargo ships, mining vessels, even passenger transports." The battle that followed was unlike anything in Imperial military history. The humans didn't fight like a proper military force. They had no formal battle lines, no clear command structure, no standard tactics. Instead, they fought like angry insects, swarming from every direction at once. A human cargo ship, damaged and venting atmosphere, rammed itself into an Imperial cruiser rather than surrender. The explosion took out both vessels. Fighter squadrons emerged from behind the gas giant, using the planet's gravity to slingshot themselves into attack runs at impossible speeds. Mining platforms throughout the asteroid belt revealed hidden missile launchers and began bombarding Imperial ships with converted industrial explosives. "They're using their infrastructure as weapons," Veltar reported in disbelief. "Everything in this system has been turned into a potential threat." The humans' knowledge of their local space gave them an enormous advantage. They knew every asteroid, every gravity well, every hiding place. Imperial ships found themselves ambushed from directions they hadn't even considered possible. But what truly unnerved SCI-FI was the humans' attitude. Every Imperial transmission offering surrender was answered with defiance. When captured, human crews would destroy their own ships rather than let Imperial forces examine their technology. When outnumbered, human fighters would deliberately ram Imperial vessels. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we're intercepting human communications throughout the system. They're calling this the Second Independence Day and asking all civilians to join the fight." "Civilians?" SCI-FI asked. "Yes, sir. Apparently they have a holiday celebrating their freedom from previous conquerors. They're treating this as another war for independence." The tide of battle began to turn against the Imperial fleet as more and more civilian vessels joined the fight. A luxury cruise ship carrying tourists to Mars dunked its passengers at a space station and returned to battle with improvised weapons. Medical ships began evacuating wounded from both sides, but only to treat them and send them back into battle. Most disturbing of all was how quickly the humans learned. In the first hour of fighting, Imperial plasma weapons had easily destroyed human ships. By the third hour, human vessels were carrying reflective armor that deflected the beams. By the sixth hour, they had somehow reverse-engineered the plasma technology and were using it against Imperial forces. "Admiral," Veltar said quietly, "we've lost 60% of our ships. The humans are adapting faster than we can counter them. I recommend withdrawal." SCI-FI stared at the tactical display. Red markers showed destroyed Imperial vessels scattered throughout the system. The humans had paid a terrible price as well, but they kept fighting with an intensity that bordered on madness. "Signal the retreat," he said finally, as the surviving Imperial ships limped away from the Sol system. A final transmission reached them from Earth. It was the same gruff voice from the mining ship, Sarah Chun. "Tell your Emperor what you learned here today," she said. "Tell him that Earth remembers every attack, every threat, every friend we've lost. Tell him that if he sends more ships, we'll be ready. We'll always be ready." The 47th Subjugation Fleet had been reduced to barely 100 ships. As they jumped to hyperspace, SCI-FI couldn't shake the feeling that they had just awakened something terrible. The ancient warnings had been right. The humans were not like other species. They did not surrender. They did not break. And now they knew that they were not alone in the galaxy. That word of the defeat spread quickly through Imperial space. For the first time in the Empire's history, a single world had repelled a subjugation fleet. The implications sent shockwaves through the Imperial military command. Emperor Vaktos received the news in his throne room on the capital world. His advisors assured him that the defeat was a fluke, a combination of poor planning and bad luck. One primitive world could not stand against the full might of the Galactic Empire. But in the depths of the Imperial archives, Dr. Kithara read Admiral Zexhi's battle report and compared it to the ancient warnings. Everything the precursors had written was coming true. The humans had turned their entire civilization into a weapon. They had adapted to Imperial technology in hours rather than years. Most importantly, they had shown that they would rather die than surrender. The Empire was about to learn what the ancient builders had discovered thousands of years ago. Humanity was not just another species to be conquered. They were something far more dangerous, and they had just announced their presence to the galaxy. Emperor Vaktos stood before the massive holographic display in the Imperial War Room. The image showed the Sol System, now highlighted in angry red on the galactic map. Around him, his top military commanders argued in loud voices about what had gone wrong with the 47th Fleet. It was bad planning, insisted General Karthik. Admiral Zexhi underestimated their numbers. We should have sent more ships. The humans got lucky, added Fleet Marshal Dexron. They had home field advantage and fighting in an asteroid belt. In open space, they would be helpless. Emperor Vaktos listened to their excuses with growing anger. The Galactic Empire had never failed to conquer a single world. Never. His empire spanned half the galaxy, controlling over 8,000 star systems. Millions of species served under imperial rule. The idea that one primitive world could resist them was insulting. Enough, he said quietly, and the room fell silent. Admiral Zexhi was a competent officer with 300 ships. The humans destroyed 200 of them. This was not luck or poor planning. This was failure. He turned to face his commanders. I want to know everything about these humans. Their technology, their military capabilities, their weaknesses. And then I want them crushed. Sir, spoke up Intelligence Director Morville, we're already working on it. Our analysis of the battle footage shows that human technology is actually quite primitive. Most of their weapons are modified industrial equipment. Their ships use chemical rockets instead of proper ion drives. They shouldn't have been able to hurt us at all. But they did hurt us, the Emperor said coldly. Why? Morville hesitated. They single quotes creative, sir. They used their equipment in ways we never expected. A mining laser became a warship gun. A cargo container became a bomb. They think differently than we do. Then we adapt, Emperor Vaktos declared. Prepare the Grand Armada. I want 12 full battle fleets. Planet killers, siege engines, the works. We will turn their entire star system into a graveyard. As news of the coming assault spread through Imperial space, something unexpected happened in the Sol System. Humanity united. For the first time in their species' history, every nation on Earth put aside their differences. Old enemies became allies overnight. Religious conflicts were forgotten. Political disputes were set aside. The attack had given humanity something they had never truly had before, a common enemy that threatened their entire species. Sarah Chun, the mining ship captain who had bloodied the Empire's nose, found herself promoted to Supreme Commander of Solar Defense. She stood in the hastily built command center on Luna, looking out at a transformed solar system. Report, she said to her aide, Pearl Martinez. Orbital construction is ahead of schedule, Martinez replied. We've built 43 new shipyards. Around Earth alone. Mars production facilities are running at full capacity. The asteroid belt miners have converted 60% of their operations to weapons manufacturing. Sarah nodded, but her face remained grim. And the population? Every nation has implemented full military conscription. We're training 50 million new soldiers, pilots, and technicians. The corporate research divisions are sharing all their technology freely. NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, and all the private space companies are working together. Through the window, Sarah could see the results of humanity's transformation. Where once there had been a handful of space stations, now massive orbital fortresses, bristled with weapons. The asteroid belt, previously home to scattered mining operations, had become a vast network of hidden military bases. Even the outer planets now hosted defensive installations. "What about the new ships?" Sarah asked. "Better than we hoped," Martinez said with a small smile. "The engineers have been studying the wreckage from the Imperial fleet. We've reverse-engineered their shield technology and improved it. Our new plasma cannons are actually more powerful than the Imperial versions." "How much more powerful?" 30% increase in energy output, and they fire twice as fast. Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their ability to learn and adapt. Every Imperial weapon they captured became the basis for something better. Every tactical mistake the Empire made was studied and countered, but she knew it wouldn't be enough. The reports from deep space scouts were terrifying. The Empire wasn't sending another subjugation fleet. They were sending an armada large enough to conquer entire sectors of the galaxy. "Ma'am," called out Lieutenant Kim from the communication station, "we're receiving a transmission from the Deep Space Monitoring Station at Alpha Centauri. Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was tight with fear. "Command, this is Monitor Station 7. We have visual confirmation of the Imperial force. 12 battle fleets, just like intelligence predicted. They're huge, Commander. I count over 5,000 heavy warships. They have ships bigger than our largest space stations." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. 5,000 ships. The largest human fleet they could assemble numbered less than 800 vessels, and most of those were converted civilian craft. "Time to arrival?" she asked. 18 days at their current speed." "Acknowledged. Continue monitoring and fall back to the secondary observation post." As the communication ended, Sarah looked around the command center. Every person there knew the odds they faced. Mathematics was against them. Logic was against them. But there was something in their eyes that had nothing to do with mathematics or logic. Determination. "Colonel Martinez," Sarah said, "initiate Operation Lighthouse." Martinez nodded and began entering codes into his console. Throughout the solar system, hidden transmitters began broadcasting a message toward every corner of the galaxy. The message was simple, recorded in dozens of languages by human diplomats, scientists, and ordinary citizens. "This is Earth, calling all free peoples of the galaxy. The Galactic Empire is coming to destroy us because we refuse to surrender our freedom. We know we cannot win this fight alone, but we will fight anyway, because freedom is worth dying for. If there are others out there who dream of liberty, who refuse to bow to tyrants, then know that you are not alone. Earth remembers. Earth endures. Earth will never surrender." The message would take years to reach the distant parts of the galaxy, but Sarah hoped that somewhere, someone would hear it and remember that resistance was possible. In the following days, humanity threw everything they had into their preparations. Children too young to fight helped in the factories. Elderly citizens who remembered old wars shared their knowledge with young soldiers. Artists and writers created propaganda that reminded everyone what they were fighting for. The most important work happened in the research laboratories. Human scientists worked around the clock to understand Imperial technology. They didn't just copy it, they improved it. Imperial plasma rifles became human plasma cannons with better range and power. Imperial shield generators became human. defensive arrays that could protect entire space stations. But the most significant breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, a historian studying the captured Imperial database, discovered something that changed everything. "Commander Chun," she said during a briefing, "I've been analyzing the Imperial military doctrine. They're incredibly advanced, but they have a weakness." "What kind of weakness?" "They're conservative. Their tactics haven't changed in over 1,000 years. They rely on overwhelming force and superior technology. They expect their enemies to fight conventionally, using established military doctrine." Sarah leaned forward. "And we don't fight conventionally." "Exactly. Every battle in their database follows the same pattern. They establish battle lines, exchange fire at long range, then close for the decisive engagement. They've never faced an enemy that refuses to follow the rules of warfare." "Then we won't follow the rules," Sarah said with a cold smile. As the Imperial Grand Armada approached the Sol system, they expected to find a primitive civilization cowering behind whatever defenses they could build. Instead, they found something that would haunt Imperial nightmares for generations to come. They found humanity at war. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Imperial scouts reached the edge of the system. Instead of the handful of defensive platforms they expected, they found thousands of hidden weapons scattered throughout the outer asteroid belts. Each one was small, almost invisible to long-range sensors, but together they formed a network of defensive fire that could target anything approaching the inner system. "Admiral," reported the lead scout, "the entire system has been militarized. They've turned every asteroid, every space station, every piece of debris into a potential weapon." Admiral Vekmer, commander of the Grand Armada, studied the tactical displays with growing unease. The humans had done more than just build defenses. They had turned their entire star system into a trap. "How many weapons are we looking at?" he asked. "Impossible to determine precisely, sir. Conservative estimate? 50,000 individual firing platforms. But most of them appear to be small, probably automated. Then we overwhelm them with numbers," Vekmer decided. "Signal the fleet. Begin the assault." But as 5,000 Imperial warships entered the Sol system, they discovered that humanity had learned from their first encounter. The Second Battle of Sol began at 0600 Universal, time on a Tuesday that would be remembered as the bloodiest day in galactic history. Admiral Vekmer watched from the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Imperial Wrath, as his armada spread across the solar system. 5,000 warships, the largest military force ever assembled, moved toward Earth with deadly purpose. This time there would be no mistakes, no surprises, no mercy. Long-range sensors show massive defensive networks throughout the system, reported his tactical officer. "The humans have been busy since our last visit." Vekmer studied the readings. The asteroid belt now bristled with weapons platforms. The space around Earth swarmed with defensive stations. Even the outer planets showed signs of military installations. But numbers were numbers, and the Empire had overwhelming superiority. "Begin the bombardment," he ordered. "Destroy everything." The first wave of Imperial fire lit up space like a new star. Thousands of plasma cannons and particle beams reached across the void toward human positions. The humans responded immediately, and Vekmer was surprised by the intensity of their return fire. "Sir," called out his weapons officer, "their defensive fire is much heavier than expected, and more accurate." On the tactical display, red indicators showed Imperial ships taking damage. Not critical damage, but more than they should have received, from primitive human weapons. Something had changed since the first battle. "Analyze their weapons signatures," Vekmer commanded. The answer came back quickly and disturbed him. "Sir, they're using our own technology against us. Those plasma Cannons are based on Imperial designs, but they've been modified. They're actually more powerful than our standard weapons. How is that possible? Unknown, sir. But the energy output readings are 30% higher than our baseline. As the battle continued, Vecmer began to understand what the humans had done. They hadn't just repaired the damage from the first battle. They had studied every piece of Imperial technology they could find and made it better. Human engineers had taken Imperial designs and improved them with typical human creativity. But raw firepower wasn't the humans' only advantage. They fought with a tactical flexibility that confused Imperial commanders. Human ships would pretend to retreat, then turn and attack from unexpected angles. Damaged vessels would ram Imperial ships rather than surrender. Most disturbing of all, human forces seemed to have no fear of death. "Admiral," reported the communications officer, "we're intercepting human transmissions. They're calling this the final battle and broadcasting messages to their families. Many of them are saying goodbye. They know they're going to die?" "Yes, sir, but they're fighting anyway." The human defensive strategy became clear as the battle progressed. They weren't trying to win through superior force. Instead, they were making the Empire pay the highest possible price for every meter of space. Hidden weapons platforms in the asteroid belt would fire once and then explode, taking nearby Imperial ships with them. Human fighters would damage Imperial vessels and then detonate their own ships to cause maximum destruction. But what truly terrified Imperial forces was the human psychological warfare. They broadcast the screams of dying Imperial crews over open channels. They showed footage of previous Imperial atrocities on conquered worlds. Most effective of all, they broadcast messages from other species in the Empire, calling for rebellion against Imperial rule. "Sir," the intelligence officer reported nervously, "the humans are trying to turn our own people against us. They're broadcasting on frequencies used by subjugated species throughout the Empire." "What are they saying?" "They're telling them that resistance is possible, that the Empire can be defeated. They're using our assault on Earth as proof that Imperial forces can be destroyed." Vecmer realized the humans weren't just fighting for their own survival. They were trying to inspire rebellion throughout the galaxy. Earth's defiance was becoming a symbol that could destroy the Empire's ability to control its vast territories. The battle raged for 14 days. Both sides took terrible losses, but the humans' willingness to sacrifice everything slowly wore down Imperial morale. Ships that should have been victories became Pyrrhic gains as human crews fought to the last breath. On the 10th day, something unprecedented happened. The crew of the Imperial cruiser Endless Victory mutinied rather than continue the assault. They had watched too many human ships die fighting for their freedom, and it reminded them of their own lost homeworld. "Sir," reported the fleet intelligence officer, "we have reports of unrest on 17 ships. Some crews are questioning the purpose of this battle." "The purpose is victory," Vecmer said coldly. "But sir, the humans have no strategic value. They're not threatening our territory or our people. We're killing millions to conquer a single system." Vecmer stared at his officer in shock. The human propaganda was working even on his own people. "We fight because the Emperor commands it." But doubt had been planted, and it grew with each passing day of brutal warfare. By the 12th day, the human defenses were crumbling. Earth's orbital platforms had been destroyed. The asteroid belt fortifications were silent. Mars burned from orbital bombardment. But the humans still refused to surrender. "Sir," the scanning officer called out, "massive energy buildup from Earth's star. The readings are off the charts." On the main screen, the sun began to brighten. Solar flares erupted from its surface, reaching out toward the inner planets. But these weren't natural solar flares. The energy patterns showed clear signs of artificial manipulation. "They're going to blow up their own star," whispered the tactical officer. "Impossible," Ekmer said. "No species would destroy their own sun." But the humans had spent the last 6 months secretly installing massive gravitational manipulators around their star. If they couldn't save Earth, they would make sure the Empire paid the ultimate price for taking it. "All ships, emergency retreat," Ekmer ordered, but it was too late for many Imperial vessels. The solar flare, enhanced and directed by human technology, swept across the inner system like a wave of death. Hundreds of Imperial ships were caught in the radiation storm and destroyed instantly. Others were damaged beyond repair. As the surviving Imperial ships limped away from the dying Sol system, they carried with them a final message from humanity. Sarah Chun's voice reached them from the evacuating human fleet. "This is Commander Sarah Chun of the Solar Defense Force. Earth is lost, but humanity survives. We are leaving our home, but we take with us something more valuable than any planet. We take the knowledge that tyrants can be defeated. We take the promise that freedom will never die. And we take with us every lesson you taught us about war." A grand armada had been reduced to less than 2,000 ships. The Empire had won, but at a cost that shook the foundation of Imperial power. More importantly, the humans had escaped. Scattered refugee fleets disappeared into deep space, carrying with them their technology, their knowledge, and their unbreakable will to resist. Within months, the Empire began to feel the consequences of their victory. Human raiders appeared across hundreds of light years, striking Imperial supply lines and research stations. They fought with captured Imperial technology that had been improved beyond Imperial capabilities. Every attack taught them more about Imperial weaknesses, but the humans didn't just attack military targets. They targeted the Empire's ability to control its subject species. Human agents made contact with rebel groups on conquered worlds, sharing technology and tactical knowledge. The message of Earth's resistance spread like wildfire through Imperial space. On the Imperial capital world, Emperor Vaktos received reports of growing unrest throughout his domain. 17 species had declared independence from the Empire. Dozens of Imperial worlds reported sabotage and rebellion. The humans had turned their defeat into something far more dangerous than a military victory. How many humans escaped? He asked his intelligence chief. "Unknown, sir. Estimates suggest anywhere from 50 million to 200 million people scattered across multiple refugee fleets. Find them. Destroy them. Sir, they're not staying in one place. Intelligence suggests they've adopted a nomadic lifestyle, moving constantly through space. They appear to be establishing hidden bases throughout the outer galaxy." The Emperor slammed his fist on his throne. The humans had done something no other species had ever managed. They had survived the full might of the Imperial military and turned their survival into a weapon against Imperial rule. Dr. Kithara, now the Empire's chief xenologist, presented her final report on human capabilities to the Imperial Council. Her words carried the weight of ancient prophecy. "The precursor warnings were accurate," she said. "Humans are not just another warrior species. They are evolution's response to tyranny. They cannot be conquered because they refuse to stay conquered. They cannot be destroyed because they learn from every attempt to destroy them. Most importantly, they cannot be ignored because they will never stop fighting for their freedom." She paused and looked directly at the Emperor. "We have not defeated humanity, Your Majesty. We have created our own destruction. They are no longer contained to one world. They are loose in the galaxy, and they remember every wound we have inflicted upon them." 20 years had passed since the destruction of Earth, and the galaxy was no longer the same. The Galactic Empire, once master of 10,000 worlds, now controlled less than half its former territory. Rebellion burned across hundreds of star systems, and at the center of every uprising were where the humans. Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, flagship of the Free Fleet. Her hair had turned gray during the long years of war, and lines of command marked her face. But her eyes still held the same fire that had defied the Empire at Seoul. Around her, the largest human fleet ever assembled prepared for the final assault on Drakmor, the Imperial capital world. 800 ships filled the space around the jump point, but these were not the converted civilian vessels that had defended Earth. These were warships built for one purpose: to end the Empire. "Status report," Sarah commanded. "All fleets are in position," reported Admiral Jackson, formerly a cargo pilot from Mars. "The Centauri Liberation Fleet reports ready. The vegan resistance is standing by. The Alpha Squadron sends word that their former Imperial ships are prepared for battle." Sarah smiled grimly. The Free Fleet wasn't just human anymore. Over the years, they had been joined by dozens of species that had broken free from Imperial rule. Former Imperial officers who had seen the truth. Rebel groups that had spent generations fighting tyranny. Even some Imperial worlds that had declared independence and offered their support. "And our special guests?" Sarah asked. "The former Imperial 23rd Battle Group is in position," Jackson replied. "Admiral Vekmer confirms his ships are ready to fight alongside us." It still seemed impossible. Admiral Vekmer, the same Imperial commander who had destroyed Earth, now fought beside the humans he had once tried to exterminate. The transformation had taken years of careful diplomacy and shared battles against Imperial loyalists, but it proved that even enemies could become allies in the fight for freedom. "Ma'am," called out Lieutenant Torres from the communication station, "we're receiving a transmission from Emperor Vaktos himself. Put him through." The main screen showed the Imperial throne room, and Sarah looked once again at the alien who had ordered the destruction of her homeworld. Emperor Vaktos appeared older and more tired than in the propaganda images, but his eyes still held the arrogance that had doomed his empire. "Commander Chun," he said, and there was almost respect in his voice, "you have fought well. Your species has proven itself worthy of admiration. I offer you one final chance for peace." "I'm listening," Sarah replied. "The Empire will recognize human independence. We will grant you sovereignty over any systems you currently control. We will establish trade relations and mutual defense agreements. All we ask is that you end this war and allow the Empire to exist in peace." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. The offer was generous, more than any rebel force had ever been offered by the Empire. Her advisors waited to see what she would say. "Your Majesty," Sarah finally replied, "you should have offered that 20 years ago, before you destroyed Earth, before you killed billions of innocent people, before you proved that the Empire values power more than life." "Then what do you want?" the Emperor asked. "What we've always wanted: freedom, not just for humans, but for every species, every world, every being that dreams of choosing their own destiny. The Empire as it exists must end. And if I refuse?" Sarah's expression became hard as steel. "Then we'll end it for you." The transmission cut off, and Sarah turned to her fleet commanders. "Signal all ships. Begin the final assault." The Battle of Drakmor was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. It wasn't just humans fighting the Empire anymore. It was the future fighting the past. Freedom fighting tyranny. Hope fighting despair. The Imperial defenses were massive. Orbital fortresses ringed the capital world, each one armed with enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. The Imperial Navy's remaining ships formed defensive lines around their homeworld, fighting with the desperation of cornered animals. But the Free Fleet had advantages that no Imperial planner had anticipated. They fought with technologies stolen and improved from dozens of different species. They used tactics learned from 20 years of guerrilla warfare. Most importantly, they fought with a unity that the Empire had never understood. When human ships were damaged, alien allies moved to protect them. When rebel fighters ran low on ammunition, former Imperial vessels shared their supplies. The Free Fleet wasn't just an alliance of convenience. It was a family forged in the fires of shared struggle. The breakthrough came when the former Imperial ships in the Free Fleet used their knowledge of Imperial defensive codes to disable the orbital fortresses. Admiral Vekmer, fighting to redeem 20 years of guilt, led his ships directly into the heart of the Imperial defense network. "This is Admiral Vekmer to all Imperial vessels," he broadcast on the command frequency. "I have served the Empire for 40 years. I have conquered worlds and destroyed civilizations in the name of Imperial glory. But I have seen what the Empire really is, and I choose to stand with those who fight for freedom rather than those who enslave it." His words, coming from one of the Empire's greatest war heroes, shattered the morale of many Imperial defenders. Ship after ship began to surrender or switch sides. The Empire's greatest weakness had always been its inability to inspire true loyalty, only fearful obedience. The final assault on the Imperial Palace was led by Sarah Chun herself. She walked through corridors that had witnessed the planning of countless genocides, past throne rooms where emperors had decided the fate of entire species. When she finally reached the Imperial throne room, she found Emperor Vaktos waiting for her, alone and unguarded. "You could have been gods," he said bitterly. "With your technology and your ability to unite other species, you could have built an empire greater than mine." "We don't want to be gods," Sarah replied. "We just want to be free." "And what happens? To me? To the Imperial worlds that remain loyal? Will you exterminate us as we tried to exterminate you?" Sarah looked at the defeated emperor for a long moment. She thought of Earth burning, of the billions who had died in the wars that followed, of the friends she had lost in 20 years of fighting. She had every right to demand vengeance. Instead, she offered something the Empire had never understood. "You'll be tried for your crimes," she said, "but fairly, by representatives of all the species you've harmed. If you accept responsibility and work to make amends, you might even live to see the galaxy you helped destroy rebuilt into something better. And the Empire? The Galactic Empire is finished. In its place, we'll build something new. A confederation of free worlds where every species has a voice, where diversity is celebrated instead of crushed, where no one world or species dominates the others." 3 months later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Unity Station, watching representatives from hundreds of worlds arrive for the first Galactic Congress. The station orbited a star halfway between what had once been Imperial space and the free territories, a symbol of the new galaxy they were building together. The Soul Confederation, as it came to be called, was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still disagreements, still species that preferred isolation to cooperation. But for the first time in galactic history, there was a choice. Worlds could govern themselves, species could develop according to their own values, and freedom was a right rather than a privilege. Dr. Kithara, now the Confederation's chief historical advisor, approached Sarah as she watched the arriving ships. "The ancient warnings spoke of humanity as a threat to galactic civilization," she said. "They were wrong. Were they?" Sarah asked. "We did destroy the Empire." "You destroyed tyranny," Kithara corrected. "The Empire was never a true civilization. It was just conquest wearing the mask of order. What you've built here, this confederation of equals, this is real civilization." Sarah nodded, but her expression remained thoughtful. "The hardest part isn't destroying the old system. It's building something better to replace it." Through the viewing window, they could see ships from dozens of different species working together to construct new sections of the station. Former enemies labored side by side, sharing technology and knowledge freely. It was a sight that would have been impossible under Imperial rule. "There's something I want to show you," Kithara said, leading Sarah to a memorial chamber in the heart of the station. The chamber was simple and quiet, with walls covered in the names of all who had died in the wars for freedom. At the center stood a single display case containing a fragment of rock from Earth, saved from the dying world by one of the last evacuation ships. "Why here?" Sarah asked. "Because this is where it all started," Kithara replied, "with a small, blue world that refused to surrender. The precursors were right about one thing. Humanity was dangerous to the existing galactic order. You were evolution's answer to tyranny." Sarah placed her hand on the display case, feeling the weight of awe. The years and all the sacrifices that had brought them to this moment. "Earth is gone," she said quietly, "but Earth's children inherited the stars." Outside the memorial chamber, the work of building a new galaxy continued. There would be challenges ahead, conflicts to resolve, and mistakes to correct. But for the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy had hope.
The massive crowd gathered in the central plaza of Zaranthus roared with approval. Banners waved in the warm breeze as High Commander Vex Thrall raised his forearms for silence. The sea of blue-skinned Zarans gradually quieted, their multifaceted eyes reflecting the bright lights of the celebration. 100 years, Vex Thrall announced, his voice amplified across the capital city. 100 years since we eliminated the human threat forever. The crowd erupted again. Fireworks exploded overhead, painting the night sky with brilliant colors. Children sat on their parents' shoulders, waving small flags with the Zaran Imperium symbol. Today we celebrate not just our victory, but our safety, Vex Thrall continued. The humans were dangerous, unpredictable, a threat to galactic peace. Their warlike nature made them unfit for peaceful coexistence among the stars. The Zaran crowd nodded in agreement. Their history lessons had taught them how humans had rejected all attempts at peaceful contact, how they had attacked Zaran explorers, without reason. The destruction of Earth and its colonies had been necessary, they believed, a regrettable but required action for the greater good. May we never again face such a threat, Vex Thrall concluded. Our children and their children will live in a galaxy free from human aggression. As the celebration continued on Zaranthus, something stirred at the edge of charted space. Hidden within an artificial gravity well, a massive ship floated silently. The Endurance was not like any normal spaceship. It was a generation vessel nearly 2 miles long, built to sustain human life for centuries if necessary. Inside its command center, Captain William Carter watched the Zaran broadcast with a grim expression. His weathered face showed signs of a hard life, but his eyes remained sharp and alert. At 63, he had been born aboard this ship, as had his parents before him. "They're celebrating our extinction," he said quietly. Beside him, Chief Engineer Samantha Miller nodded. Her hands moved quickly over the control panel, adjusting settings as data flowed across multiple screens. "The last system check on Project A, Phoenix is complete," she reported. "The drive is operational. We're ready, Captain." William looked around the command center. 12 other officers worked at their stations, all descendants of the original survivors who had escaped Earth's destruction a century ago. None of them had ever set foot on a planet. The Endurance was the only home they had ever known. "Call the Council," William ordered. "It's time to decide." 3 hours later, 25 men and women gathered in the ship's council chamber. They represented all sections of the vessel and its approximately 47,000 inhabitants. Each member wore a simple uniform with a small phoenix emblem on the shoulder, a reminder of their purpose. "Project Phoenix is ready," William announced to the council. "After 3 generations of work, we can finally return to known space. The question is, should we?" Gregory Walsh, the oldest council member at 86, spoke first. "Our grandparents saved us from Earth with one mission, to ensure humanity's survival. We've done that. We have a stable population. Our hydroponics and resource systems are fully sustainable. We could continue to hide, to live. And do what? Asked Olivia. Rodriguez, the tactical officer. Drift through space forever? Watch our population slowly decline over generations until we're truly extinct? That's not survival, that's just delaying the inevitable. Gregory frowned. I'm suggesting caution. The Zarans outnumber us millions to one. They have thousands of warships. We have one vessel. One vessel with technology they can't imagine, Samantha pointed out. Our grandparents and parents didn't just focus on survival. They pushed human innovation to its limits. Our phase shift drive, our shield systems, our weapons, they're all beyond anything the Zarans have. Frank Daniels, the commander of SCI-FI. The ship's security forces nodded in agreement. The Zarans believe they won because they caught us unprepared. They don't realize what happens when humans have a century to focus on a single goal: justice. The debate continued for hours. Some council members worried about the risks. Others argued that they owed it to Earth's memory to return. In the end, they voted unanimously to proceed with the plan that had been developed over generations. William stood before the ship's population later that day. Their faces looked up at him from the main gathering hall, which had been designed to hold all of the Endurance's inhabitants. Many held the hands of their children. Some wore pendants containing tiny samples of Earth soil, passed down through generations. Since the day our grandparents escaped Earth's destruction, we have lived with one purpose, William began: to preserve humanity and, when ready, to return. Today, I announce that we are ready. A murmur ran through the crowd. This moment had been discussed in theory for all their lives, but now it was real. We are not seeking revenge, William continued. We seek justice. The Zarans believe they eliminated humanity. They celebrate our extinction. They do not know that we survived, that we grew stronger, that we prepared. He paused, looking at the faces before him. Our plan is not to destroy them as they tried to destroy us. We are better than that. But we will make them face what they did. We will reclaim humanity's place in the galaxy. The crowd began to applaud. Some cheered. Others remained silent, understanding the gravity of what was coming. In 3 days, we will activate the phase shift drive and return to known space, William announced. All sections should complete final preparations according to protocol. This is what we have prepared for across 3 generations. This is our purpose. As the crowd dispersed, Samantha approached William. The scout ships are ready for deployment. Once we arrive, we'll begin the first phase immediately. William nodded. The Zarans think they know humanity from our past. They think they know what we're capable of. They're about to learn how wrong they are. At that moment on the outer edge of Zaran territory, 3 scout ships detected an unusual energy signature. The reading made no sense to the Zaran scientists on board. They had never seen anything like it before. Log it and send the data back. To Zaranthus, the lead scientist ordered. It's probably just a sensor malfunction. But it wasn't a malfunction. It was the first ripple of a wave about to crash over the Zaran Imperium, the first sign that humanity wasn't as gone as they believed. The first tremor of what was to come. Admiral Krelak stood before the large display screen, his blue skin darkening with concern. The reports from the outer territories made no sense. 3 mining outposts had gone silent in the past week. 2 research stations had lost all communication. A patrol fleet reported strange energy signatures before they too disappeared. These disturbances began near Sector 12, said his assistant, pointing at the map. They have spread inward following this pattern. Krelax studied the movement. Pattern? It was not random. It showed intelligence and purpose. It showed planning. And the transmissions, he asked. Have we decoded them? His assistant shifted uncomfortably. Our language experts believe it is human speech. Krelax turned sharply. Impossible. The humans were eliminated a century ago, every colony, every outpost. None survived. I understand, Admiral. But the audio patterns match our historical records of human language. And there is one phrase that repeats in every transmission we've captured. What phrase? We remember. On the other side of the galaxy, aboard the Endurance, Olivia Rodriguez coordinated the operations from the tactical center. Screens showed the positions of 6 small stealth vessels, each carrying a team of specially trained soldiers. These teams moved quickly and efficiently, avoiding detection as they disabled Zaran facilities one by one. Team 3 has completed their mission, reported a communications officer. The Proxima relay station is now offline. Olivia nodded. Tell Commander Daniels to proceed with the next phase. Frank Daniels and his team floated silently in their stealth suits as they approached the massive communication relay. The structure was several miles wide, a hub that connected dozens of Zaran colonies to their homeworld. His team had already disabled the minimal security systems. Plant the charges at the designated points, Frank ordered through the secure comm system. Remember, no casualties, we're not here to kill. His team moved efficiently, attaching small devices to specific parts of the relay. These weren't explosives. They were advanced EMP generators designed to disable systems without causing permanent damage. The Zarans would be able to repair everything eventually, but it would take time. All charges set, reported one of his team members. Frank moved to the final position himself. He attached a special projector to the relay's largest moon. When activated, it would burn an image into the surface and a phoenix rising from flames. The ancient Earth symbol had become humanity's calling card during this campaign. Clear the area, Frank ordered. Detonation in 3 minutes. As his team retreated to their vessel, Frank took one last look at the relay. The Zarans would soon understand that something impossible was happening. Humanity had returned like ghosts from the past. Back on the Endurance, William Carter reviewed the progress reports. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The stealth teams had disabled 23 key Zaran facilities. No lives had been lost on either side. The campaign of fear and confusion was working. Lisa Peterson, the ship's head psychologist, sat across from William in his office. The psychological impact will be significant, she said. The Zarans have lived for a century believing they eliminated us completely. That belief is part of their cultural identity now. Discovering we survived will cause collective trauma. William nodded slowly. Is that wrong? They caused us more than trauma. They destroyed our homeworld. I'm not judging the morality, Lisa clarified. I'm confirming that our strategy is working. The Zarans are experiencing exactly what we want them to. Confusion, fear, helplessness. The same feelings our ancestors experienced. Eric Thompson, the military strategist, joined their conversation. We should increase pressure, take out some of their military installations next, show them we could hurt them if we wanted to. No, William said firmly. We stick to the plan. Communication systems only. No direct attacks on their military. No casualties. They wouldn't show us the same restraint, Eric argued. They didn't 100 years ago. That's why we're better than them, William replied. We have power now, but we use it with purpose and control. At that moment, Diane Collins entered the office. As the ship's historian, she carried the responsibility of preserving Earth's culture and values. I've been thinking about the Geneva Protocols, she said. Our ancestors created rules for warfare, lines they wouldn't cross no matter what. Are we honoring those rules? William considered her question carefully. We're not at war, not exactly. But yes, I believe we're honoring the spirit of those protocols. No civilians are being harmed. We're not using banned weapons. We're showing restraint. And our end goal? Diane asked. Is it justice or revenge? Justice, William said firmly. The 7 Zaran leaders who ordered Earth's destruction must face consequences, but we won't punish an entire species for the actions of their leaders. Meanwhile, on Zaranthus, the Zaran Scientific Council examined the phoenix symbol burned into the moon near the Proxima relay. It was enormous, visible from space, and perfectly executed. There's more, said a junior scientist. Hidden in the transmission we received, it contains coordinates. Coordinates to what? Asked the council leader. The young scientist looked up, his eyes wide with fear. To here, to Zaranthus. Panic spread quickly through the Zaran leadership. Reports of facilities going dark had been kept from the public, but rumors were spreading. Security forces were doubled around major cities. The defense fleet was put on high alert. High Commander Vex Thrall demanded answers from his military and scientific advisors, but they had none to give. How could humans have survived? How could they have developed technology that could evade Zaran detection? How could they move through Zaran space unnoticed? Find them, Vex Thrall ordered. Use every resource we have. Find these human ghosts and eliminate them once and for all. But the humans didn't want to be found. Not yet. Their campaign continued systematically. Each disabled facility, each Phoenix symbol, each message of "We remember" brought them closer to their final destination. Tucker, Endurance moved silently through space, its revolutionary phase shift drive making it invisible to Zaran sensors. Inside, the descendants of Earth prepared for the moment they would reveal themselves fully, the moment when the Zaran homeworld would tremble with the knowledge that humanity had returned. "We're ready for the next phase," Samantha reported to William as they observed the final preparations. "The decoy drones are programmed and ready for deployment." William nodded. "Begin countdown. In 48 hours we arrive at Zaranthus." High Commander Vex Thrall paced the emergency council chamber as reports continued to flood in from across the Imperium. The impossible was happening. After 100 years of believing they had eliminated humanity, the evidence suggested otherwise. Humans had survived, and they were making their presence known in increasingly bold ways. "How is this possible?" Vex Thrall demanded. "We destroyed their homeworld. We hunted down every colony. None should have escaped." The military leaders and scientists in the room looked at each other nervously. None wanted to be the one to suggest that the great Zaran Imperium had failed in its mission a century ago. Finally, a junior science officer named Threll spoke up. "The humans must have had hidden ships, generation vessels perhaps designed to sustain life for long periods. For a century?" asked an admiral skeptically. "Theoretically possible," Threll replied. "But what's more concerning is what they've been doing during that time." "Explain," ordered Vex Thrall. "If humans survived in isolation, their entire society would have been focused on survival and revenge." Threll brought up data on the main screen. "Look at the technology they're using now. The stealth systems that can evade our sensors. The ability to disable our facilities without a trace. This suggests a century of concentrated development. Innovation driven by desperation and purpose." The room fell silent as the implications became clear. The humans hadn't just survived, they had advanced beyond Zaran understanding. Aboard the Endurance, William Carter finalized preparations for their arrival at Zaranthus. The massive generation ship had been their home for a century, but now it was transforming into something else, a symbol of humanity's return. "All systems are ready," reported Samantha. "The phase shift drive is operating at peak efficiency. We'll reach Zaranthus in 6 hours." William nodded. "And the broadcast?" Nancy Turner, communications officer, replied. "The message is prepared. We can transmit on all Zaran frequencies as soon as we arrive." "Good." William turned to Paul Martinez, the chief of security. "What about the targets?" Paul brought up 7 profiles on the main screen. "Our intelligence is solid. These are the 7 Zaran leaders who ordered Earth's destruction. 5 are still in positions of power, including High Commander Vex Thrall. 2 have retired but remain influential." William studied the faces of the aliens who had ordered the extinction of his species. For generations, humans aboard the Endurance had prepared for this moment, the moment when justice would finally come. "We're not seeking wholesale slaughter," William reminded his officers. "We want those responsible to face justice. The Zaran people followed their leaders, just as any people would." "And if they resist?" asked Frank Daniels, who had returned from his stealth mission. "Then we demonstrate our power," William replied. "But we don't become what they were. We don't destroy worlds." As the Endurance approached Zaranthus, the Zaran, a military, mobilized on an unprecedented scale. Every available warship was called to defend the homeworld. The planetary defense system, A network of massive cannons and energy shields was fully activated for the first time in 50 years. Admiral Krelax coordinated the defensive formation. Nearly 3,000 warships formed a protective sphere around the planet. Smaller fighters patrolled between the larger vessels. Every weapon was charged and ready. "Our long-range sensors detect nothing unusual," reported a sensor officer. "No sign of human vessels." Admiral Krelax didn't feel reassured. The humans had evaded detection for weeks while disabling facilities across Zaran space. There was no reason to believe their sensors would detect them now. "Maintain full alert," he ordered. "They're coming. I can feel it." On the Endurance, Kevin Phillips, one of the engineers, reported to William. "The drone deployment system is ready, Captain. All 2,000 decoys are programmed and standing by." The drones were a clever part of their plan. Each small unmanned vessel emitted energy, signatures identical to the Endurance. When deployed, they would create the illusion of an impossible fleet. Thousands of human ships appearing simultaneously. "Deploy on my mark," William ordered. He looked around at the command center crew. These were the descendants of Earth's survivors. None had ever set foot on a planet. They had lived their entire lives preparing for this moment. "For Earth," William said quietly. "For justice." The crew nodded in solemn agreement. "Deploy the drones." Thousands of small crafts launched from hidden compartments on the Endurance. They scattered in all directions, each activating its signature emitter. To Zaran sensors, it would appear as if thousands of human ships had suddenly appeared from nowhere. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Zaran fleet, detecting what seemed to be an impossibly large human armada, broke formation in confusion. Communication channels filled with panicked reports. Some ships began firing randomly into space, hitting nothing but creating chaos. "They're distracted," reported Olivia from Tactical. "The phase shift drive is ready." "Engage," ordered William. The Endurance's revolutionary drive activated. The massive human ship shifted partially out of normal space, becoming invisible to conventional sensors and immune to physical weapons. It slipped effortlessly through the disorganized Zaran fleet, passing between warships without being detected. Within minutes, the Endurance reached low orbit over Zaranthus. Billions of Zarans looked up to see an impossible sight: a massive, human vessel hovering above their capital city. "We've arrived," Samantha confirmed. "Phase shift drive disengaging, shields at maximum power." William nodded. "Nancy, broadcast the message." Nancy activated the communication system. Her voice was steady as she confirmed, "Broadcasting on all Zaran frequencies. Visual feed transmitting to all their public displays." Across Zaranthus, in homes and public squares, on personal devices and massive screens, the Zaran people saw the face of a human for the first time in a century. William Carter looked directly into the camera, his expression calm but resolute. "People of Zaranthus," he began. 100 years ago, your leaders ordered the destruction of Earth. They tried to eliminate humanity from the galaxy. They failed." William paused, letting the words sink in. "We are the descendants of Earth. We have survived, we have returned, and we demand justice." On the planet below, Vexthrall watched the broadcast with growing horror. The impossible had happened. Humanity had not only survived, but had developed technology that made them untouchable. The Zaran homeworld trembled, not from physical destruction, but from the realization that everything they had believed for a century was wrong. "Target that ship," Vexthrall screamed at his military commanders. "Use everything we have." But the commanders hesitated. Sensors showed thousands of Zaran weapons already locked onto the human vessel. None had fired. None dared to fire. Something was preventing their weapons from engaging. A defensive system unlike anything they had ever encountered. Humanity had returned. And Zaranthus trembled. Panic spread across Zaranthus like a wave. Millions of Zarans rushed out of their homes and workplaces to look up at the sky. The human ship hung there, impossibly large, a dark shape against the bright blue of their world. Many fell to their knees in fear. Others stood frozen, unable to process what they were seeing. On public screens throughout the city, William's message continued. The Endurance's systems had taken control of the Zarin broadcasting network, ensuring every citizen could hear the truth. For 100 years you have celebrated our extinction, William said. His voice was calm but firm. You were told that humans were dangerous, that we threatened the galaxy. Now, you will see the truth. The broadcast shifted to historical footage, images preserved from before Earth's destruction, peaceful human cities, children playing in parks, scientists working together. Then came the records of the Zarin attack, enormous weapons firing on Earth from orbit, cities burning, billions dying. This is what your leaders did, William continued as the terrible images played. This is the crime they committed. And this is why we have returned. On the surface, many Zarans reacted with horror and disbelief. They had been told a different story for generations, that humans had been aggressive, that the attack had been necessary for galactic security. Now they were confronted with evidence that contradicted everything they had been taught. Protests erupted spontaneously in several cities. Crowds gathered outside government buildings demanding answers. Why had they been lied to? Why had their civilization committed this atrocity? Inside the Zarin central government complex, High Commander Vexthrall was losing control. His military advisors reported that all attempts to attack the human ship had failed. Their weapons couldn't penetrate whatever shield protected it. There must be a way, Vexthrall shouted. No defense is perfect. Sir, said Admiral Krelax cautiously, perhaps we should consider negotiation. The humans have shown remarkable restraint. They could have attacked us at any time during their campaign. Negotiation? Vexthrall hissed. With the remnants of a species we tried to exterminate? They want vengeance, not talk. Yet they haven't fired a single shot, another military leader pointed out. Their message speaks of justice, not revenge. Vexthrall's skin darkened with rage. If we cannot destroy their ship directly, then we will make it too costly for them to remain. He turned to his weapons officer. Target our own capital city. Prepare for planetary bombardment. The room fell silent with shock. Sir? The weapons officer asked, not sure he had heard correctly. You heard me, Vexthrall snapped. If we fire on our own capital, they will either have to use their defenses to protect our people or be responsible for Zarin civilian deaths. Either way, we learned something about their capabilities and their weaknesses. That would kill hundreds of thousands of our own people, Admiral Krelax objected. Unnecessary sacrifice to eliminate the human threat once and for all, Vexthrall replied coldly. Commence bombardment. But the weapons officer didn't move. Admiral Krelax stepped forward. No, we will not fire on our own people. Vexthrall turned in fury, but found himself facing several high-ranking officers, all with the same resolved expression. High Commander Vexthrall, Admiral Krelax said formally. In accordance with Zarin Military Code, Article 7, we relieve you of command for ordering actions that directly threaten the safety of Zarin civilians. Security officers moved quickly to restrain Vexthrall. He fought against them, screaming threats, but was overpowered and removed from the command center. Open a channel to the human vessel, Krelax ordered. We need to establish communication before this situation deteriorates further. Aboard the Endurance, William and his officers observed the chaos unfolding on the planet below. Their sensors detected the brief powering up of the orbital weapons platforms before they suddenly went offline. Something's happening in their command structure, Olivia reported. Their orbital weapons were activated, then deactivated. Internal communications suggest a change in leadership. Are they preparing to attack? William asked. I don't think so, Olivia replied, studying the data. It appears there was an attempt to target their own capital city, which was prevented by military commanders. This information surprised William. They were going to fire on their own people? It seems that way, Olivia confirmed. And now we're receiving a communication request from someone identifying as Admiral Krelax. William considered this unexpected development. Their plan had anticipated resistance, not internal conflict within the Zarin leadership. Put the Admiral through, he decided. The main screen showed the face of a Zarin military leader. His blue skin was darker around the eyes, a sign of stress in their species. "I am Admiral Krelax of the Zarin Defense Fleet," he began. "High Commander Vex Thrall has been relieved of command. We request a cessation of hostilities and propose opening a dialogue." William studied the alien's face, looking for signs of deception. "There have been no hostilities on our part, Admiral. We have disabled facilities, but harmed no one." "A fact I have noted," Krelax replied. "Which is why I believe your claim of seeking justice rather than revenge may be genuine." Before William could respond, alarms sounded throughout the Endurance. "Multiple weapons locks," Olivia called out. "A Zarin battle group is moving into firing position." On screen, Admiral Krelax looked equally surprised. "Those are not my ships. They must be loyal to Vex Thrall." The rogue Zarin vessels opened fire. Dozens of energy beams struck the Endurance's shields, lighting up the sky above Zaranthus. The ship trembled slightly, but its advanced defensive systems held. "No damage," Samantha reported. "Shields at 97%. William made a quick decision. "Activate Defense Protocol 3. Target weapon systems only." From the Endurance, precisely aimed energy pulses fired back at the attacking vessels. Each shot disabled a weapon system without damaging the ships themselves. Within seconds, the entire attacking battle group was effectively neutralized. Intact but harmless. On the surface, the Zarin population watched in awe. The human ship had defended itself with surgical precision, choosing to disable rather than destroy its attackers. Admiral Krelax stared at the screen in disbelief. "You could have destroyed them." "That's not why we're here," William replied simply. "We've had enough destruction." The Admiral was silent for a moment, then spoke with new respect in his voice. "What do you want from us?" "Justice," William answered. "The 7 who ordered Earth's destruction must face consequences for their actions, and your people must know the truth about what happened." "And if we agree to these terms?" "Then we can begin to discuss peace," William said. "Humanity doesn't seek war, Admiral. We never did." As the conversation continued, Barbara Wilson, the chief diplomat, whispered to William, "This is unexpected. We planned for resistance, not cooperation." "Plans change," William replied quietly. "We need to adapt." Down on the planet, more Zarins gathered in the streets looking up at the human ship. The fear was beginning to give way to something else: curiosity, wonder, and for many, shame at what their civilization had done. The Zarin homeworld had trembled, not from physical destruction but from the revelation of a terrible truth and the demonstration of humanity's power and restraint. The reckoning had begun. 3 months passed since the day the Endurance appeared above Zaranthus. The galaxy had changed forever in that time. The news that humans had survived spread quickly among all spacefaring civilizations. Many watched with interest to see what would happen next. Would humanity take revenge? Would there be war? Or something unexpected? On a neutral space station positioned between Zaranthus and the newly established human territory, representatives from both species gathered. The station was simple but elegant, designed specifically for these historic meetings. In the main conference room, William Carter sat across from Keshivara, the new Zarin leader who had replaced Vex Thrall. "The transfer of responsibility is complete," Keshivara stated, her voice calm and measured. "The 7 individuals who ordered the attack on Earth have been surrendered to human justice, as agreed." William nodded, his expression solemn. "They will receive fair trials with representatives from both our peoples present. Justice, not vengeance." The trials had been a central point of the negotiations. The humans insisted that those responsible for Earth's destruction face consequences, but they had worked with moderate Zarin leaders to ensure the process would be transparent and fair. It was important to both sides that this be seen as justice, not revenge. "There is another matter," Keshivara continued. "The formal acknowledgement." She activated a display screen showing a document titled "The Galactic Acknowledgement of Crimes Against Humanity." It contained an official Zarin admission of wrongdoing, an accurate historical record of what had happened, and a commitment to education reform so future generations would know the truth. "It has been approved by our full council," Keshivara confirmed. From this day forward, Zaran children will learn the true history, not propaganda. This acknowledgement had been just as important to the humans as the trials. The survivors of Earth didn't just want punishment for a few leaders, they wanted the truth to be preserved. Barbara Wilson, the chief diplomat for humanity, entered the room with news. The preparations on New Terra are proceeding well. The first settlement will be ready for inhabitants within 2 weeks. New Terra was the name humans had given to the habitable world granted to them as part of the reparations agreement. It wasn't Earth. Nothing could ever replace their lost homeworld. But it was a place to start anew. A planet with blue skies, clean water, and fertile soil where humanity could plant roots again after a century in space. And the other ships? HFY asked. Have they made contact? William smiled for the first time that day. Yes. The Perseverance and the Defiance have emerged from hiding. They've confirmed their approach to New Terra. Humanity now numbers just over 60,000 souls. This had been another revelation that shocked the Zarans. The Endurance hadn't been the only human ship to escape Earth's destruction. 2 other generation ships had also survived, hiding in different regions of space. They too had developed in isolation, focused on the same mission, ensuring humanity's survival and eventual return. Samantha Miller entered the conference room with a young Zaran scientist. They had been working together on technology exchange programs, another part of the peace agreement. The Zarans shared their knowledge of other spacefaring species and star charts, while humans shared some of their technological innovations. The integration of our shield technology with Zaran power systems is working, Samantha reported. And we've learned a lot about slipstream navigation from their scientists. The young Zaran scientist nodded enthusiastically. Human innovation is remarkable. Your isolation forced you to develop technologies in ways we never considered. William turned to HFY. There's one more item I'd like to discuss today. A formal invitation for a Zaran delegation to visit New Terra once the first settlement is established. HFY's eyes widened slightly. The Zaran equivalent of surprise. You would welcome us on your new homeworld, after everything that happened? Moving forward requires courage from both sides, William said. We can't change the past, but we can choose our future. Linda Mitchell, the chief botanist, had been working tirelessly to prepare New Terra for human habitation. The generation ships carried seed banks and DNA samples from thousands of Earth species, plants and animals preserved by the original survivors. Her team was now in the process of introducing these species to their new home. The first Earth trees have been planted, she reported later that day as William toured the settlement site via video link. Oak, pine, maple, and the first crops will be ready for harvest in about 4 months. William watched the video feed showing humans working on the planet's surface. Many were experiencing gravity, wind, and open skies for the first time in their lives. Children born on the generation ship stared in wonder at birds flying overhead. Birds genetically engineered from preserved DNA. It's really happening, William said quietly. After all this time, we have a home again. On Zaranthus, changes were also occurring. Protests had led to governmental reforms. The truth about Earth's destruction had forced a national reckoning. Most Zarans had genuinely believed the propaganda about humans being aggressive and dangerous. Learning the truth had shaken their society's foundations. In a small medical center in the capital city, something remarkable was happening. A Zaran, child named Thrix, suffering from a rare genetic condition, was being treated with advanced medical techniques developed by humans aboard the generation ships. The child's parents watched nervously as Dr. Jack Foster, one of the first human physicians to work on Zaranthus, administered the treatment. Your son will be fine, Jack assured them. We've performed this procedure many times. The Zaran father looked at the human doctor with gratitude. Why help us? After what our people did to yours? Jack considered the question carefully. Because that's what humans do. We build, we heal, we move forward, even when it's difficult. 2 weeks later, William stood on a hillside overlooking the first human settlement on New Terra. Homes and community buildings rose from the valley below. In orbit above them, The Endurance, home to generations of humans, was being converted into a permanent space station. Samantha joined him on the hillside. "Do you think our ancestors would be proud of what we've accomplished?" she asked. William watched as a group of human and Zaran scientists walked together toward the research center. "I think they would be. Not because we won some great victory, but because we remained human despite everything that was taken from us." In the distance, children played, some human, some Zaran. Their laughter carried on the wind. "Perhaps this is what survival really means," William said. "Preserving not just our lives, but who we are." The sun set on New Terra, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Humanity had endured. They had returned. And they had chosen justice over revenge, building a future rather than dwelling in the past. The Zaran homeworld had trembled not from destruction, but from the revelation of a terrible truth, and from the unexpected mercy of those they had tried to destroy.